years ago. And then 2 days later, I found out that my long-term partner was in another relationship. So I threw him out. And then from that, in connection to emotional regulation, I was using alcohol to help me cope in connection to my mum's death. I went on a dating site, and that's ultimately where I met my abuser, and we were then, I was then in an abusive relationship for the next 6 years.
Wow. Can I start with that and say, wow? Like I know there's some people who will have their comments when it comes to dating apps. So we'll park that for a little bit. But for
Mm-hmm.
you, you're going through all of this. Is it around the same time that this was all happening? Was it like back to back to back, or was there some gaps in between all your potentially traumatic relationships that you were enduring?
Ultimately, I would say probably within a 6 to 12 months period from losing my mum. That was the kind of period where I then met my abuser. So ultimately, from my perspective, looking back, I was in a very vulnerable place when I met this person. So that was the beginning of the relationship. And well, I'll start off with giving you his background a little bit, which then kind of helps to feed in. So he was a sales guy, and he came across very grandiose, and everyone kind of loved him, and you know but not at all what things were like behind closed doors. And the beginning of the relationship, one of the things that I would look back and look at now is, and maybe as a yellow flag, was that he wanted me to move in with him quite quickly. So within 6 months we moved in together. So, and then within 12 months of us being together, he then lost his job and didn't work for the next 6 years. So ultimately, generally, for most people, financial abuse can generally be the first part of an abusive relationship. So now looking back, I recognize that as being, the beginning of the end, if you like.
I think that's a step that's missed, where
Mm-hmm.
it's the financial abuse, and I think maybe it doesn't get as much attention as maybe the
Mm-hmm.
other forms, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
physical abuse, you can see the
Yes.
scars, the damage, right?
Yes.
Mental abuse, you can see the maybe change in the person's behavior. You can't see the scars, but
Mm-hmm.
their reaction to it may change. They may be home a lot more. They may be isolated. Their moods may
Mm-hmm.
change. They may be more sad, less energy.
Mm-hmm.
Emotional abuse as well.
Mm-hmm.
Financial abuse, I think a lot of times people don't see that is because your finances is still very private to many
Mm-hmm.
people,
Yes, yes.
right?
And ultimately, the beginning of that relationship, obviously things were good. So I felt responsible in that relationship then in connection. So all the way through our relationships, I was working 3 jobs, because ultimately, your bills have to be paid, you have to look after yourself. So I felt responsible. I think that was part of what, to some degree, kept me there in connection to my value base, that I knew that when I left, this person would not have a home, did not have financial security. So though everything that had gone on and how bad that was, I still felt responsible to some degree.
And women in general will score a lot higher on those things when it comes to the personality tests, right? Like when it comes to the agreeableness, the nurturing, more so than men. So I think that's why you have women, they get trapped that way, where it's like, okay, I'm capable of taking care of this person. If I leave them, there won't be someone else, but there is someone else to take care of them. One, there's themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And two, the thing with abusers that a lot of people I think miss is that they're very good at finding the person to abuse. Would you
Yes.
agree?
Yes, and from my perspective, I was already in that vulnerable place when I met this person, that I wanted that connectedness with somebody. I wanted that intimacy because I felt really vulnerable and alone in that loss ultimately. So, everything that was going on for me kind of fed into, um, you know, creating how the abuser wanted it to be. So within that 6 months period, I did move in with him. So obviously at that point, things were good. But actually, in doing that, what I did do was isolate myself from family and friends, and looking back, I can recognize that now, but you don't recognize that in the beginning when things are good in that relationship.
And Jude, like the mask will always fall
Hmm.
from the abuser, right? And I
Yeah.
want to one thing I want to clarify to some people is that there are the relationships, like when you're in a healthy relationship, the person does want to spend a lot of time with you, right?
Hmm.
Meaning that, okay, let's go do activities in public. A lot of times what the abuser does is that they would isolate you from the outside world,
Hmm.
right? Where it's
Yes.
okay, whatever it is that you're going to do, it has to be indoors. That is a big difference. So I don't want someone to say
Hmm.
that, well, Train,
Hmm.
my girlfriend, she's always planning trips and we're going. I'm like, you're not being abused. She loves you.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Right?
Or the other side of that is that if you are going outside, then I'm coming with you. That you're not spending time on your own. That that time is always with that other person.
Yeah, I call that like tailgating, where it's like, let's say, for example, Judy and I are in a relationship and you're saying you're going to the store. Okay, I'm coming.
Yes.
Let's say, oh, I'm just going to the mid box. Okay, I'll be there too. Right? It's
Mm-hmm.
it's like
Mm-hmm.
when you do go outside, their eyes are still on you, right?
Yes.
Because abusers in a lot of ways are very insecure
Yes.
when it comes to her, right? Insecure in the
Yes.
way that not that the insecure in what you're doing, the insecure is that okay, if you two were to leave my presence, you may realize you're being abused and you may seek
Mm-hmm.
help or you may seek an escape,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And I think even when you're in the presence, there is a sense of who is that message of, or and when you're not in their presence, it's contacting you via text message. So you're constantly in contact with that person, whether you're with them or not.
Yeah, I was in a relationship where this was many years ago, and
Hmm.
I was fortunate enough to realize what was going on, but it did take me some time. And what I
Hmm.
realized is that this person, their phone was an extension of themselves. So when they were in constant contact with me, it was like their hand was on me. I was like, okay,
Hmm.
I know where he
Hmm.
is, right? But for me, I'm such a routine person
Hmm.
where it was kind of unusual. But looking back, it's like, okay, I go to work. After work, you know what? I come home, I get some
Yes.
meat, then I go to the gym.
Yeah.
That makes it very easy for the abuser because once they understand your routine, they're like, okay,
Hmm.
I know Train's going to be here during this time,
Hmm.
there during this time, and the
Yes.
expectation is that he's going to be home around 9 p.m. Now,
Yeah.
if 9 p.m. comes around and he's not home, oh my God, what is he
Hmm.
doing?
And
Right?
I think for me, it was, I will take you to work. I will pick you up from work, which sounds lovely, doesn't it? Someone's going to take you to work, they're going to pick you up from work, they're looking after you. But actually, the other side of that coin is I know where you are. I'm controlling where you are.
And it's interesting to see how you can have someone that's abusing someone and the difference is between the men and women. Like in general, the men will want to be around you. I'll drop you here, I'll drive you here, I'll be there. With a woman, it's more so okay. I want to know where you're going. I want to be
Uh-huh.
connected, right? Like you see how
Yeah.
even though
Yeah.
abuse is abuse, but you see how the two different ways for the same
Hmm.
situation. So I
Hmm.
know because most of the time the man is going to drive the woman where she wants to go, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I the phone represents me. So if you're
Hmm.
not answering your phone, it's like you're not talking to me. So therefore, what are you doing? Whereas on the
Yes.
male's perspective, it's like, okay, I'm going to drive you there because I'm still observing you in the physical sense. Would you agree?
Yes, very much so. And also I'm observing you in the physical sense and I know where you are.
because that's big for them. So when you are going through your abuse, I know
Hmm.
some of the women that I've spoken to, they've mentioned the vulnerability as you shared.
Hmm.
Also, one thing they did mention is that even though the attention in the beginning, even though, sorry, the relationship was good in the beginning and it may have deteriorated,
Hmm.
in their mind, they're thinking they share that terrain. I had someone that was giving me attention, whether it was good or bad. And at that point in my life, I really need attention from someone,
Hmm.
especially a
Hmm.
male figure. Is that something that you were
Hmm.
experiencing as well?
I would say there was a sense of not wanting to be alone, have to leaving my mum, losing my mum. I think there was a real sense of not wanting to be alone. But I think there were lots of factors for me, that I'd moved in with him, so I hadn't got a home. I had six dogs. So, to leave and rent somewhere would be difficult because where can you go with six dogs? I had an elderly parent, um, when you think about going living back home. So it's like the options to actually get out and have somewhere to live was difficult. So I felt kind of stuck